These are the things that you consider maybe have been or are a downfall for you, but these are the things that I want you to embrace. These are the things that I want you to recognize and use those as a tool, as a step ladder, so to speak, to get to another rung on that ladder and just climb up, baby, climb up. And it's okay to have fallen. I watched this speech that Denzel Washington gave. He says, fall down 7 times, get up 8.
Tell me who's missing. Well, I am so excited, dear listeners, for you to meet Robin Farris, who I got to meet through a friend who does work with the Sparrow Center in Colorado. She met Robin, who is a formerly incarcerated woman, spent more than 3 decades in prison. And when she told me a little bit of Robin's story, I was like, I got to talk to Robin. And what I think you'll hear today in this episode is a story of acceptance, is a story of awareness, is a story of transformation. And I think, at least as one person in the world who has my own prejudices and judgments about the criminal justice system in this country, this is a story that sits alongside that. That is true, and this is true. That Robin has gone through hell and has come out on the other side really staunchly advocating for women just like her and giving women a chance to be mothered and nurtured in ways that she wasn't. And so here we sit, ready to listen to Robin Farris's story, and hopefully after we listen, take some action. That's who's missing. This is Robin Farris. Get into it. So first of all, got woken up a little too early. I was thinking about you this morning and thinking about this interview and thinking about just like what a privilege it is every time I get someone's time and energy. Because I think both of these things are finite. And I'm most interested, and I know I shared this with you, in like having this be with every person I interview, an artifact for them to add into their legacy, because our stories are always changing. And I think that that's pretty, pretty remarkable. Life is wild.
It is.
So I'd love to start with just for today, it's springtime 2024. If someone said to you, and I'm going to ask you, what's your story?
Oh my goodness. Well,
Where would you start? And let's just say, I mean, you and I we're just chatting. What's your story? Where would you start?
I have to definitely start with the fact that spring is a to me it's a season of rejuvenation. It's a period where things come back brand new, fresh. It's a regrowth, and so I have to kind of use that as my analogy in terms of where I am, where I've come from, that
Mhm.
rebirthing process, and going through the stages of life. And for me, I really have to focus on the last 32 years and the processes that have taken place in those 3 decades and where I'm at now in my life. And so, yeah, springtime, I'm glad that you mentioned that. And going through this metamorphosis to create and recreate, the woman that I am becoming today.
When you talk about cycles and stages, I think as a woman, kind of, I've recently come into this ability to trust myself. That's like my latest stage versus kind of like looking externally for what to do next and who I am, right? Which is not easy, right? Because we got all kinds of culture around us being like, this is who you should be. What? So when you think about your stages and your cycles, you mentioned, I mean, however you want to talk about it, but like, what have been some of the stages and how would you describe the stage you're in now?
The stage I'm in now is acceptance,
Mm,
accepting myself in in bringing my past into my present, and
Mm,
also recognizing that it's definitely going to be connected to my future, and
mhm.
embracing that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think for I went through this period in my life where I thought that detaching myself from certain aspects of my story was the way to survive.
Mhm.
And what I learned from that was not working for me. It was creating more issues. It was creating more problems. So when I
Mhm.
got to this place to where I'm embracing myself in its totality, including my past and understanding that has shaped me today, that has really, really helped me to just love myself. You just mentioned liking yourself, but that has helped me love myself and have a relationship with Robin. I'm in a really good space, real good space.
I can tell. I could tell. Here's what I could tell. Couple things. One, we logged in and, as is the case with technology, like it takes a minute sometimes for things to sync up. Not for a moment was that, and then, were you stressed that I'm sure you were inside. But you showed up with a smile, you were smiling throughout technical difficulties, you get on and then, it's like, let's go, right? Is it fair to say, Robin, that the inner critic or, not loving yourself has also been a part of your story?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because you can't have that, in my opinion, speaking in terms of myself, without having what comes after that.
Mhm.
So it's all of it is really inclusive. It's inclusive and it's my truth. It's
Mhm.
my truth. And so my mantra, if you would, is to thine own self be true. So I embrace that. And that's all aspects of my truth. It's the good truth, it's the bad, and it's the ugly. But understanding that all of those
Mm.
components are necessary for me in my life in order to continue to excel, to continue to grow, just continue to even be an advocate, if you would, when it comes to other people around me. And
Mm.
to use my journey, my life experiences as an example of what life has looked like for me and what it can look like in terms of all of the different dysfunctionalities that I have to recognize, but using those as a strength and definitely, definitely not a weakness.
I love that. So your experiences, you mentioned the good, the bad, the ugly. One of the things that I have learned, and I'm going to be 45 this year. God willing, I keep learning, right? Is that everyone loves to hear the story of someone who's been through things and has arrived at a place of loving themselves. But not a lot of people like to share, if they've been through that, what it was like. And what I hear in what you're sharing is you've let go of a lot of judgment of yourself, or work through it every day. So, can you tell us what was it like to be you?
Hmm, good question. I think being self-critical and exercising constructive criticism are two entirely different growth processes that I have gone through. Because I went through the period of being so critical of myself that it was my demise. It wasn't helping me. It wasn't helping me to grow, to prosper, to stay on a path of progression. It was more of a path of self-destruction, really. And my actions, my behaviors were a direct result of that way of thinking. So, changing my thought processes was definitely a step. More importantly, first step to getting to a place where I'm looking at myself in a totally different way. And you said when I first arrived, I'm smiling and all this kind of stuff. There's a time in my life where I didn't. Yeah, smiling and having a pleasant face and having that energy of being approached and being approachable. I didn't used to have that at a period in my life. Definitely not social, didn't want the social kind of lifestyle around me, kept people at bay. That's definitely not Robin anymore, and that's not who I am today. And I'm glad. I'm happy. That's not who I am anymore today.
Well, sometimes when I talk to people, I like to acknowledge that there's parts of us, right? There's a part of us that's like keeping you at bay. There's a part of us that's saying, come closer, right? And what I hear, Robin, in your story is like the integration of those parts, like they're all here. There might still be that part that wants to keep you at bay. You mentioned, let's just talk about being, having a kid in my life, and I know you also have a daughter. Um, what was it like being a kid? Do you think about you at that age,
I do.
what she was like? Yeah.
Yeah, I do. Unfortunately, I look at it, I guess it's important for me to put things into its proper compartments. And my childhood and my upbringing is an important compartment because my childhood had its challenges. It definitely did. And so I had to navigate around certain things. I had three brothers growing up. Being the only girl in a family of three brothers was difficult. Uh, Gender differences, things of that nature that
Mhm.
came from my household, and had to learn basically how to become a woman, how to
Mm.
evolve into my womanhood. And I actually am still doing that right now. It hasn't stopped. But
Yeah,
my
I get that.
yeah, but my attitude has changed. My energy has changed, and just the way I think about who I am today as a woman, as a person, has definitely gone through different phases, different stages of growth and transition.
And where did you grow up? Where in the world were you?
I was born and raised in Pueblo, Colorado, very small town. Not a lot going there on there, not a lot to do.
Yeah.
Which is another reason why I wanted to leave, which that is really wasn't in hindsight, not a very wise decision.
Mm.
But I also embraced the things, the challenges that happened during that course when I decided to leave that have shaped me today. Unfortunately, I think you and I talked a little bit about this, that, the years that I was incarcerated, the decades that I was incarcerated, 32 years, a lot of, the beginning of the whole, I don't know, downfall, if you would, stemmed from the fact that I left my hometown. But when I really look at the reasons why I left as a very young woman was because I did not like that woman and I was actually running away from that one.
Mhm.
So, that kind of goes back to what I was saying about who I am today and embracing and loving and accepting. And that didn't used to be my story many, many, many years ago.
Gosh, yeah, the rejection of the woman you were. How old were you when you decided to leave Pueblo?
23, 22, 23,
Oof,
something like that.
oof. I mean, I've just what's happening in my body right now is, like, remembering myself at that age,
Yeah.
and the grappling. So you were grappling with where you wanted to live, but you're also grappling with yourself and the parts of you that I mean, I remember, for me, it was, I identify as being a plus size woman, or obese or fat or whatever word you want to use. I had a lot of rejection of my body at that point where I was doing stupid stuff, you know, because of what I felt like I wasn't getting, attention, validation, all that stuff, right? And at 21, oh my God, 22, 23, you're just like, I also felt kind of impervious. Like I couldn't get hurt. I couldn't get hurt. Everything I would take the risks, right? Um, what was that was the part of me I think that if I had to look back, I'd be like, man, I was running away from something. What were you running away from, do you think?
That body image that you spoke of, I think that is, yeah, that's huge. That's really, really important because I struggled with that exact thing. The body
Mm,
image. You look in the
yeah.
mirror, certainly didn't appreciate the person that was, the reflection of the individual that was I was looking at me.
Yeah.
And again, not understanding there's a system there in place, to get over these types of things. But I didn't I didn't seek them. I didn't seek that
Yeah.
out. Probably didn't even recognize that they existed. Of
Yeah.
course, there's much more openness today, in society today when it comes to things of that nature. Um,
Yeah.
you know, how you perceive yourself, your image, the image of yourself, and how you present that image to society.
Mhm.
My way of presenting my image to society was very dysfunctional, very
Mm,
reclusive, uh,
mm.
very invasive, you
Yeah.
know. And so definitely was not a constructive way to be me at that time.
Mhm. Mm. And then you move,
And then yeah, then I moved.
and
Yeah.
you can't yourself came with you.
Myself, all those I could, yeah.
I know.
Yeah,
Lo
myself
and
came
behold.
with me.
Yeah, and then, you mentioned, and I suppose it's sort of offhand maybe for the listener, but that you've spent some time, many, many years, incarcerated. So that woman who moves, is that the same woman in the phase of her life that got incarcerated? Or is it the same phase, do you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
No doubt about it. That is another aspect of my story, my truth that I today have embraced
Mm,
because I recognize that now.
mm,
And it has actually helped me grow. It's helped me understand, the areas back then, the Robin back then,
mhm,
where and how things, just fell off,
mhm,
you know, the errors that were made, the destructive patterns that I had, the dysfunctionalities that existed in me. And in understanding all of that,
mhm.
embracing it now today and recognizing how the pieces now how they fit,
Yeah. Yeah.
how they fit.
How do they fit? I mean, how did you do that? Because I imagine, Robin, there's a listener who's like, 21, 22, 23, let's just say, and just going through it, whatever it is, whether, it's being evasive or being hypersexual or being like whatever dysfunction. And they might be sort of listening and thinking like, how did you do that? Do you have a sense of what the process was for you? You obviously were met with like a real consequence, You're going to prison. This is happening. Yeah. And now, yeah, so let me just hear you talk about it.
Well, you mentioned how do the pieces fit, and when you asked that question, I was thinking to myself, Robert, how did that fit? Well, it fit imperfectly. Is how it
Mhm.
fit, very imperfectly,
Mhm.
and that is a process that helped me grow to understand the imperfections. The imperfections in me, and it's okay. It was okay not to be the person that caused
Mm.
harm that resulted in my incarceration, but to understand the imperfections that led to my incarceration and not to make it perfect because that will never ever happen, but to work through those imperfections for a greater
Mhm.
good, to strengthen
Mhm.
me. One of the things that I have always said, and Brene Brown, I love her as an author. She wrote a book that spoke very much in terms of vulnerability. And before I read that book, that was my self-talk, that vulnerability is my
Mm.
strength. It definitely was never a weakness, but I didn't know that at a period in my life. It wasn't until I embraced my vulnerabilities or understood how empowering that is for me to be that person.
Yeah, so the pieces fit together imperfectly, amen to that. Do you have a sense of, like, you found yourself incarcerated, a series of decisions led you there. Um, do you have a sense, Robin, looking back, because I know you're a mom to a daughter, but, like, what you needed to hear or what help you needed as you made that move from Pueblo? What do you think you really needed at that time?
You know, that is such a good question. And I thought about this. What I needed at the time was somebody to mother me.
Mhm.
I don't really know, how that, makes sense. But I needed the nurturing. I needed somebody to sit me down and basically teach me that it was okay to go through certain areas of my life as a woman and to experience, those things like my image, the image of myself. And that's a phase in life, as a young person, as a young woman, to embrace that and talk me through, school me through, tutor me, mentor me through those different phases of my life and be like, this is just a phase of your life, Robert. You're going to go through many, many, many different phases as you grow. This is just one phase. And so let's get you through this phase and get you ready for the next phase. That wasn't available for me. So I really do believe, I honestly do believe that had I had that, that there was definitely different directions that I would have taken in my.
Yeah. Another thing that strikes me, Robin, is, and we talk about decisions and choices, and I think you're alluding to also, well, let me ask you, are you alluding to mental illness? Are you alluding to sometimes, there's a lot that I'm even thinking about with my own clients and like gender fluidity, sexuality, like all this stuff that means being a woman. Can you speak plainly about like the phases that you needed some mothering through?
Definitely, femininity, understanding that we haven't been cookie cut, and that we're all designed
Yeah.
individually with different attributes, different characteristics. And that if an individual feels like, well, I don't fit in, I don't belong, I feel like an oddball, which I did, but understanding today, didn't understand it back then, that hey, you know what? That's okay.
Mm,
It's okay to feel different. It's okay to be different. It's okay to have an identity that sets you apart from the next person. It doesn't make you any less than. It doesn't make you a freak or an oddball.
mm,
In my opinion, it makes you very, very special. It makes you very unique. And those are the people that uh, I want to reach and have them understand that, what, you're an incredible person. And yeah, and the differences that you see in yourself
mhm,
makes you even
mhm,
an extraordinary person. But to have that talk, that somebody got in my head and got in my heart and my spirit and just poured that into me, that I do believe that definitely could have changed my way of thinking in terms of myself and raised my level of self-esteem,
yeah,
which
yeah.
would have resulted in different choices.
How old were you when you were incarcerated then?
Went to prison at 26.
Do you remember walking in those doors?
Yeah, vividly. Vividly.
What was that day like? Can you tell us about it?
One of the most difficult series of days that I could ever encounter. My sentence was a very long sentence. It was considered a life sentence, and having a metal door slam behind me was a period of realization
Mhm,
in my heart and in my head that Robin, you're in prison and that you're not going to leave. And that was my thought processes. That was my mindset at that time. And
mhm,
at the time, it was my reality. Whether I wanted to face it or,
mm,
you know, or not, this is what it is. Here you are, Robin.
mhm, mhm.
Emily's conversation with Robin Farris will continue after a short break.
Robin would like to spotlight an organization that is near and dear to her heart. In fact, it is where she works. It is the Spiro Justice Center in Colorado.
The attorneys that work with this center are very much involved in seeing whatever injustices that have occurred in an individual's life that have led them to incarceration, or individuals who have been incarcerated for a very, very long time. The amount of care and compassion and work and dedication that these attorneys, Kristen Nelson, Dan Meyer, have shown in this organization and the longevity is awe inspiring. And had it not been for that compassion that they showed to me, definitely would not have received that clemency grant. They care and they listen.
Did you know? I know I didn't. Spiro is the Latin word for hope. And we certainly could use more of that as we continue the mission to bring an end to false and dehumanizing narratives about those who are incarcerated. That's what the Spiro Justice Center sets out to do. You can learn more about their vision at spirojustice.org. That's SPERO justice.org. What makes it so that some people persist and others make the ultimate sacrifice? And to speak plainly, some people survive and some people either end their lives or, do something that might have, really life affecting consequences. So I think about you walking into prison. I think about, yeah, that first day, but then there's so many days
Mhm,
after that first
mhm.
day
Yes,
that you
absolutely.
survived. And not even, and this is what's so remarkable about you, Robin, not even survived, but chose to thrive.
Yeah.
How the hell do you do that?
What you said is very poignant. Um, some people persist, and definitely some people merely exist. And choosing what side of that I was going to be on, that was definitely a process. Because when I first arrived, it was I just wanted to just merely exist.
Mhm.
And that way of thinking, it shifted in me. It changed from merely existing to persisting. That fight, that putting up the fight, the continuation of I am more than the sum of what put me in prison, and digging down deep and finding out those purposes that are innate, that were always there, never discovered them, but reaching that period in my life to where I'm like, now it's time. It's time, Robin, to discover who you are and persist in that discovery and fight, 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 fight. Not just for freedom necessarily, but fight for who you are, the reason why you are, the purposes that you have that were always there, they're innate, and exercising those and bringing them to the surface. So that was the process, going from existing to persisting and maintaining that.
Do you have a sense, was it distinct of I am going to choose to get to know myself, to build some compassion for myself? Was that a distinct season of your life that happened? And did anyone help you?
Oh my goodness, yes. There, I know there's stereotypes around individuals who are incarcerated, and rightly so. Nobody's taking that away from the truth that society perceives concerning individuals who are incarcerated. But you know what, Emily? I met a
Mm,
lot of good people in prison. I met a lot of good women in prison. I met a
mm,
lot of compassionate women in prison, as well as staff members um, who worked there as well.
mm,
So yeah, there were different periods in my life where I can remember being mentored by women who were incarcerated. Because I went in as a very young woman. There were elderly women who were,
mhm,
incarcerated with me. They basically kind of took me under their wing and mentored me, schooled me, talked to me, gave me the time that I needed to, develop certain skills, survival skills. And whether they were called prison survival skills, but to me, they were more life skills. And those skills actually helped me navigate through 32 years of incarceration, which is a lifetime.
Mhm. Mhm. How old was your daughter when you were incarcerated?
6,
Yeah. When did she start visiting you in prison?
6.
6. Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
right
right
away,
away.
right away.
'Cause something was coming up for me, Robin. I was thinking like, is it faith? Is it family? Because I wanna dispel. I mean, we were born with ourselves and we die with ourselves. Like we get right. That's it. Right. That's kind of the thing. And hopefully along the way, we've got people around us, right? So I'm thinking about the mothering you wished you had, right? Having a child. Like, what was it like to be an incarcerated parent? Was she a driver for you to continue to persist?
Definitely. There's just no doubt about it, and her being so young and me missing so much of her formidable years, those different phases of her life when, you need your mom there. I remember, my daughter doing different things as a teenagers, whole different phase.
Uh-huh.
They insist that they're right. And I want to do this, and this is not wrong. And why can't I? And why are you saying no? That my parents were really good for, was letting me be that disciplinarian and, setting the boundaries. This is what you can do. This is what you cannot do. This is what I'm not approving of this behavior. Um, and still having that freedom to be the parent, even though I was in prison and parenting from prison, but being the disciplinarian in that relationship, which I felt was so important and key. Even though not being physically there it was hard, and it was definitely hard on both her and I. But there were times in periods where I remember I was just so thankful to my parents that they allowed me to still have that freedom to be that mother.
I want to go back to one thing you talked about, and especially because this podcast is really focused on who's missing from your community and really thinking about that critically. So I want to go back to the elders that you met while you were in prison, and I would just love to hear a story of one of your mentors while you were in there. And what was she like? And what did she teach you? Who do you remember? Who sticks out as someone who was missing from your life that maybe you found solace or respite in while you were incarcerated? A friend, even.
As far as the elderly women, this one individual, her name is Dorothy. She was so kind and so patient and generous with her time with me and her wisdom. That's one of the things that really stood out for me. And today, even today, I recognize the wisdom in these individuals. The fact they were incarcerated did not take away from how wise these people were. Being able to sit down with somebody and uh, and just be honest about, my fears, the challenges of being in prison, and being schooled on how to navigate through the prison system. What you say, what you don't say, the things that you do and do not do, the individuals who you stay away from. And yeah, just going through different life lessons. And even though it was in that environment, but it was meant for me internally, inside of Robin, even though, my outward world was one of incarceration, of imprisonment, but understanding the life lessons of how to be okay with who I was in spite of my circumstances, and embrace my intellect, embrace my communication skills, to come out of that period of reclusiveness, to be more um, society oriented, and to break down walls and start letting people come in to my severe boundary line that I had established that kept people at bay. These are some of the things that I was taught. These are some of the things that, Dorothy and other individuals like her helped me recognize about myself because I didn't see that. But, watchful eyes and observation and pulling me in and telling me, Robin, here, come here, sit down. It's just boom, sitting down next to, these women and listening to them. Man, what a difference it made. What a difference it made.
Hmm. It's making me think, Robin, of your path toward leaving prison. Because, we get to talk today as a result of community. I remember one of your attorneys was quite taken with how you told your story and communicated and asked for help, asked for help. And so tell us about the process and the systems that were involved in your release. Tell us, what do you want? What is important for people to know about that?
Well, at the end of everything, all of my appeals have been exhausted. They were done. Any level of appeals that were put in for me through various attorneys, particularly one that my father had hired, he works very, very diligently to get my convictions overturned. Didn't happen. So the only outlet that I had at that time was clemency, a commute from the governor. And I, had no means of hiring any attorneys or anything like that. But I believed that I had a story to tell. And you know, I was, and I don't want to quantify this by saying that I was an angry woman. And when I say angry, I don't mean in terms of anything that's destructive. I believe that anger can be very, very useful. It can be very constructive, and it could be utilized as a tool. So I use that in that frame to go on a letter campaign. I wrote so many letters to so many individuals, different organizations, media outlets, attorneys, numerous, numerous letters because Colorado had not given clemency to a Black woman that we know of, at least in 32 years for sure. And I was the third longest serving woman incarcerated in the state of Colorado. And I wanted to put that out there. That narrative needed to be told. And so, in the course of me writing these letters, that was my objective to put that out there. I wasn't asking anybody to represent me. I wasn't asking for you know, uh, any representation legally. But I felt like there were things that were being overlooked as far as women incarcerated, especially women of color incarcerated, Black women incarcerated. That
Mhm.
story was not being told. So when I wrote my letters, there was numerous opportunities for the individuals that I had written to write me back. That did not happen. Writing hundreds and hundreds of letters, maybe six letters came back to me in return. One of them was from an attorney
Mm.
by the name of Kristen Nelson, who at the time was operating with a nonprofit called the PAL Project. The name is now changed to Sparrow Justice Center. But she read my letter, and I had forgotten that I had written her because I wrote so many letters. And she'll tell the story
Sure.
that she was getting her hair done while she was reading my letter, and what I had spoke up in the letter in terms of no Black woman ever having received a commute from a governor in the state of Colorado in over 30 years. That really, really stuck with her, and she wanted to meet me after that. She's like, that could not possibly be true. She did a little bit of background, did a little bit of research in the fact that it was true. And she decided to pay me a visit. And she came and saw me and we talked. She came back and she came back and then pulled in a colleague as well, Risa. Her name's Risa. And the two of them together, they put together this amazing clemency petition. And we presented in such a way to where I'm sitting right now in front of you having this conversation.
Ugh. And I was reading, Robin, it was like 1,000 hours of work, right? Which I just, again, I I am in community with a lot of people who would identify as being like at capacity or over capacity, just in being able to kind of get through the day, you know? And I really try to invite people to think about what's really important to them and give that the time and energy. Because absent that, everything's going to pull on your attention, right? Like there's a lot competing. So, what I appreciate about what you sharing about your attorneys is like it took a lot of time and it took a lot of energy, and it was really important to you, and it was really important to them. And I feel like it's a signal to a listener that like there are people that care, and like you can't give up on yourself, you know?
Oh, no.
It
No,
wasn't
no,
an
no.
option for you. It
Absolutely.
wasn't an option. Yeah.
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
Wow. The last sort of point that I wanna that what I think is because when I asked you, like, how do you identify and, like, what are some of your identifiers, right? Like, mom, formerly incarcerated, advocate, right? You went right to I'm a mentor now. So I'm just, like, mindful of, your process and meeting people like Dorothy, and now, living in the world, you identify as a mentor. You identify as an advocate. Who are you mentoring? Who are you advocating for at this stage in your life?
I'm advocating and mentoring for, thank you for the question. I'm advocating and mentoring to women like myself,
Yeah.
and particularly women who have faced so many different challenges. Many of the women, the individuals that I work with at my job, have some history, some background that is criminally justice
Mhm.
involved, of course. It's a halfway house. So they've either come out of jail, they've come out of prison, or they've come out of some type of treatment program. And finding out that what comes with that is a definitely a reflection of who I was many, many years ago, and seeing myself in them and understanding where they are right now, this phase in their life and their journey. So my vulnerabilities, part of that is that I tell my story, who I was back then, where I came from. I'm very honest with all of these things and let them know, yeah, I was in prison. I received a commute from the governor of the state of Colorado, Jared Polis. And but in the course of that, going from point A to now point B, that all of that's in between those things are so important and they're inclusive in the story, in the journey, and wanting them to understand that these are the things that you consider maybe have been or are a downfall for you, but these are the things that I want you to embrace. These are the things that I want you to recognize and use those as a tool, as a step ladder, so to speak, to get to another rung on that ladder and just climb up, baby, climb up. And
Mhm.
it's okay to have fallen. It is okay to have fallen. And it's okay to have fallen. I watched this speech that Denzel Washington gave. He says, fall down 7 times, get up 8. I love that speech.
Yeah.
And I so agree with that concept. No matter how many times, we fall on our faces, it's okay.
Mm.
But as long as we keep getting back up, and I want them to understand you can, and you have the strength, you have the fortitude, you have the intellect to be and do whatever you set your heart and mind to. And so, as a mentor, as an advocate, as an encourager, these are just one of many, many things that I influx into these women. And hopefully, it sticks.
And I can see on your face as you're talking, right? This is what I love about mentoring. Maybe we get into it because of what we've been through, and we can teach, but oh man, are we also the student?
Oh, yeah.
And that really, like, I can see it on your face, like you're glowing, right? That there's a process of helping, and I don't know what the platitude is. It's not coming to mind, but like that we are helped, and that's been my experience too. Ugh,
Awesome. Don't you love it?
I do.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't know. Everybody needs someone to believe in them.
absolutely. And I know that I had that. Somebody believed in me. Two attorneys,
Mhm.
Kristen Nelson and Risa Wolf Smith, believed in me,
Right?
and they took the time and the effort to bring things to fruition. And here I sit.
Is there an invitation? I just want you to think about this for a second. It gets me a little teary-eyed kind of thinking about it. To someone who's listening, is there an invitation of something you want them to do today or say to themselves today in this spirit of helping each other, being there for each other? Anything that's on your heart?
Yes. Speaking in terms of something constructive, because I know that we can self-talk ourselves into things that are very negative, uh, counterproductive. But in terms of something productive, I feel it's important to always talk to yourself. Doesn't make you a weirdo or anything like that. And to ask yourself a very important question, or make a statement that says, I know that I was put on this earth for this reason. And it is constructive,
Mm,
and fill in that blank.
mm,
Whether it is today, I'm going to make somebody smile. Today, I'm going to listen to somebody. Today, I'm going to tell a story. Today, I'm going to cry with somebody.
mm,
Today, I'm going to cry with myself.
mhm.
Um, but to fill in that blank, because everybody has a purpose for being here. There's an important reason for all of us to be here today.
A million sincere thank yous to Robin Farris for her openness and willingness to share her story and to continue impacting others through the work that she does as a program associate for the Spiro Justice Center. And please remember, share this episode with someone and follow us everywhere we are at Who's Missing Podcast. And that way, we always turn up in your feed. You don't even have to think about it. It's like automatic.
And who was ever missing, it's okay because you're found.
That's right. We got you. Look to the left, look to the right. There's people here.
We got you. We got you. That's right.